Welcome back to the Theology of the Buddy podcast for Catholics who love tradition and want more of it. My name is Chris. I'm joined today by my wonderful co-hosts, Mike and Brooke. This is episode 45, and we're continuing our discussion about the liturgy. In particular, we're taking a look at the entrance to the liturgy in both the traditional Latin Mass and also the Novus Ordo, as well as we're going to take a look at the liturgies of St. John Chrysostom. And so we're just going to continue on and tell everybody how much we love the Mass, because that's what we do. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Pretty well, thanks.
That's a terrible intro, I know. Let's see you do
a terrible entrance.
Yeah.
A terrible introit.
Yeah. I'm not very good at this stuff. It's tough going off the cuff, you know? It is.
Yeah. If only had some kind of codified way that you had to introduce the podcast every single time, that would really make sure you were prepared.
That's right.
Mentally and spiritually for what you were about to undertake. If the podcast was way more important, like if it was the most important thing in the world, we would definitely do that.
I'm so glad you're part of this podcast, Mike. Have I told you that? Have I told you that lately? I'm glad that you both are. Like, you guys are just, it's just great hanging out with you guys. I always look forward to like hanging out and like just chatting. Like we've been doing this almost like every weekend, you know? We've never talked this much. Like besides like when Mike and I used to play Halo, which was almost every night when we were like really
until I
young.
came around.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
It was a different time. Not a better time, just a different time.
Before the Empire.
Ooh, you can call me the Empire. Makes me feel powerful as I sit here in my bathrobe.
You know the internet can hear that.
I am not ashamed. I also have a top knot. There, I said it.
Wow. You look kind of like a ninja a little bit right now.
Pretty bad looking ninja.
Yeah. Combination ninja and grandma.
Yeah.
I got my fuzzy slippers on and got all my steps in on my Fitbit.
Did you? Nice.
I did. I think I got about 13,000 today.
Whoa. That's a lot.
Brooke is pro at Fitbitting. She gets so many steps.
So not only am I kind of like a grandma, I'm like a middle-aged woman that just got a Fitbit and got to get your steps in.
My supervisor is like that at work. She's like, you know, as soon as the warmer weather comes around, she's like, I went, like, she'll do team meetings and she'll come on the conference call and she'll be like, I just went for a walk. I'm trying to get in my steps on break. I'm almost there. And the entire team meeting, she's like, just the worst. Luckily, she'll never hear this podcast, but.
Oh, you still need 640 steps, you liar.
Oh, hold on. It's looking for my device because I felt it go off today.
Technical difficulties.
We might be delving too deep into this topic of Brooke's exact step count.
Yeah, but if I don't say exactly what I got, people will think I'm lying.
And the fans need to know. You don't have any fans.
I don't.
That's
yesterday I got 11,000. Didn't too bad. Anyway, I digress.
Okay.
Yeah, we have kind of important things to talk about.
Yeah.
But
yeah, before we get into this, I just have a very quick anecdote to share. So, as we said at the beginning, we're starting the ascent into the sanctuary and the beginning, technically, of Mass. Now that the preparation period is complete in the extraordinary form or in the traditional Latin Mass, Yeah. So I just wanted to make share a quick story. So luckily this person will never listen to this podcast, but today I went to a wedding and I attended this wedding of a coworker of mine, and the beginning of the wedding. So this wedding wasn't a Catholic wedding. It was done just like actually in like a meeting, like space thing in St. Thomas. And I mean, it was well decorated, but obviously it's not a Christian wedding. And so I walk in and I sit down and the ceremony begins and the music starts up and it's this sappy country song. And suddenly it starts glitching out. So already like their entrance song is already becoming super glitchy. Apparently they didn't test this before they did the actual entrance, right? So,
no.
So the music starts glitching. So it's like, going on and not as if country music couldn't get worse, so now it's glitching out. And then there's like the entrance of all the bridal party or whatever. And then the bride walks in. This is her second marriage. She comes in and she comes to the front and the like technical ceremony begins, and the officiant, he's going through, the typical marriage is, important, blah, blah, blah. And now the couple is going to share their vows. And they've written them to make sure it comes from the heart from both of them.
Shudder.
Ladies first. The look of terror comes across the bride's face. Silence. She goes, I probably should have written that down. You go first. So the groom says, okay, all right. Well, and he, reaches in his breast pocket, pulls out his vows that he had written, and goes on for about a minute, 2 minutes. Very, very saccharine, very sweet, very sappy, but well thought out vows. Okay. I promise to always kiss you in the morning and always kiss you at night. I promise to
Yeah.
And then he ends, I promise to stand by your side through thick and thin. And that's why you write things down. and it was like, yeah, it got so tense. It got so tense at this wedding. And then the bride's like, and she says, like, I just really appreciate you loving me and loving my kids, and how much it means to her. Not a vow at all. Like, there's no, I promise to be with you for the rest of my life, thick and thin, whatever. Like, nothing. So after that, then the officiant says, okay, like, we're going to do real vows, essentially. Walks them through at least the basic vows, which I was like, okay, that's good. Like, at least they, at the end of it, can say they've actually made legitimate vows. And, they, exchange rings. You may kiss the bride. And then it's like, okay, time to leave, time for the exit of the bride and the groom. They turn around and the music doesn't start. And then she's like, it's this song? Excuse me? And then the guy plays it. It's the complete wrong song. And she goes, wrong song. Anyway, and they walk out.
Oh, wow.
I'm sitting there going, what did I just watch? So, for the record, looping it back into the liturgy, preparation is important. So, in the Latin Mass, we have just spent 4 episodes discussing the preparation, because it's really important to prepare yourself. If it's important to prepare your vows and prepare all those things for your own wedding, it's of infinite importance to prepare yourself for the wedding feast of the Lamb. That's my 2 cents. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. And you can follow us on Spotify.
You mean thanks for listening to my podcast?
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. It was really painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cringy. It's cringy.
I mean, we've been to weddings like that where it's like pre-written vows, but we've never had one that went off the rails like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was bad. And you know, like just thinking about it too, like I've talked with numerous priests about couples that come in and will say that they want to get married, but they want to write their own vows. And the church forbids this, right?
Mm-hmm.
The church forbids it. And it's, I understand just from a practical standpoint, because it prevents that from happening. You know what I mean? Like the right, say the black, do the red kind of thing prevents those kinds of train wrecks from occurring. You know, having 1,000,001 options, having the ability to go off the cuff or whatever. Like when it comes to these most important things of life, you need those guardrails. You do, because things can go south and you don't expect it to. So, yeah. So
I just don't see the connection how that's related at all to the liturgy, but maybe smarter people than me will get it.
You're being vague, right?
I don't know why I'm feeling so sarcastic tonight.
It's because you're hungry.
Maybe. Okay.
By the way, just a quick question. How's your Lent going so far? We're officially at the end of half of week 1. Well, it is technically the end of week 1.
I think it's going pretty well.
Yeah. But I'll be honest, like I was like, this is gonna be fine. You know, day 4. Hey Google, how many days until Easter? And then shame. It's like, how much of a pansy am I? Like, I just started. It's not bad. The hardest part is when I want to do my workouts and my body is still adjusting to the different amounts of calories that I'm taking in. Yeah. I know I will adjust.
For the listeners, we're on the pre-Vatican II fasting rules that changed in 1966, I think.
Yeah. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, it used to be every day of Lent except Sundays, you would do the familiar fast that we now have on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, where you have one normal meal. You can have 2 small snacks that don't add up to a meal. And then Fridays and Saturdays, you abstain from meat. Mm-hmm. And that's it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's kind of a weight taken off, like a stress taken off this year for me, because I don't have to be like, what am I going to do for Lent? You know, maybe that's the wrong approach, but back in the day, that was just kind of the norm. That's just what people did.
Yeah, it's kind of new, right? The whole idea of being like, I'm going to give up chocolate. It's a brand new thing. Like for the rest of Christian history, the church just told you this is your fast.
Yeah.
And you might do additional things too, obviously, like, you know, almsgiving and stuff were encouraged and other devotions and whatnot. But
and full disclaimer, if you're one of those people that gave up chocolate for Lent, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry, it was just an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm calling you out specifically if you gave up chocolate.
Yeah.
Some people really like chocolate.
Yeah.
But no, it's going fine. How about you?
It's good. It's good. I'm definitely not doing the pre-Vatican II fast, but I'm doing a bunch of other penances, and I'm doing quite a bit of fasting.
That's great.
Like, yeah, it's interesting because, like, and I don't know about you guys, but like, just the beginning of Lent this year was weird, and yeah, like even in family life, there's just weird stuff happening, and you're like, this is not fun.
Well, and even with the, like the recent document that came out, like, and all the other stuff that's happened too. It's like, wow, I do have a lot of things to fast for.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know what to fast for, that.
Yeah.
The church right now, like as it is, all of it.
Yeah. And I think that's also partially why things are getting weird. And like I do think that there's been quite a bit of spiritual warfare, like for us. And you start battling for your family, you start battling for the church, and, like, I can't remember what bishop it was, or what pope it was, I should say. But, it was saying that that Lent is like our badge of warfare. And it really is. And, as soon as you really start digging into Lenten penance, things start coming out that you don't necessarily expect. So
it's almost like a detox.
Yeah.
Like the bad starts exposing itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I forget who it was that said, I think it was like a church father or something who said, basically, if we don't fast, we'll be like the laughing stock of Christendom.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad looking at the Roman Rite now, because we have stopped fasting. And if you see what anyone in the East thinks of us, we are the laughingstock of Christendom, because the Eastern Catholics and the Orthodox have largely maintained their ancient fasts. And for various reasons in the Roman Rite, we have watered it down to the point where, since the latest round of changes in the 60s, basically no one fasts at all.
It's true.
And it seems like no coincidence that the church has come crashing downhill at the same time that she has stopped fasting.
Yeah.
It's all goes hand in hand, just kind of the laxness in every area. And fasting and penance has to be an integral part of the restoration, if there is going to be one.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. Like our Lord even says, some demons cannot be cast out without prayer and fasting, right? So as soon as you start eliminating prayer and fasting,
those demons are in there and they're not leaving.
Yep. So it's like that story in the Gospels too, where it talks about, you expel the demons and then, but you don't fortify yourself and they come back sevenfold. So yeah, I don't know. I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So anyone out there who's, struggling with their Lenten fast, we're with you. And if you're still thinking about things to fast from, because I know I've been there too, where I've started Lent and been like, okay, I have something, but maybe I should do more. Like, I don't know what to do. If you're one of those people, I encourage you to, like, don't let yourself be defeated. Pick up something and go. Or if you've, failed at your penance, pick up and carry on, because we're all in a battle together, and we all fail at various times too.
There is some sense of fellowship in doing that unified fast as well. Like, because Mike and I are both doing it. I don't want to say there's a sense of accountability, but
why not? There is.
I saw you eat that stuff earlier.
It's not so much accountability, but it's like solidarity.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There's a real encouragement in someone doing it with you.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful, guys. That's awesome that you're able to work together on this too, right? And kind of go into battle hand in hand. And like, I just think that's great. That's so good.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my best to be a good Ezer Connecto.
Maybe someday we'll be as hardcore as our friend from church who's doing the medieval fast.
That's right.
That is truly hardcore.
Yeah. It actually took me by surprise. Like, he comes up and he's like, yeah, so I'm not eating until 3:00 tomorrow. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, and this guy's a new trad. He just started coming to the traditional Latin Mass within the last, few months, really. I was just like, I'm not even that hardcore.
It'd be so hard with kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But props to him for going all in.
Yeah.
Well done.
It's just like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it proper. I'm going to do like the most hardcore rules the church has had.
Yeah.
Boss.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
True. So, shall we hop into it really quick?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do
into the Mass.
Before we do, just a quick reminder to our listeners that if you go to theologyofthebody.com and go to our show notes for today, you will see in there a link of a way that you can support the podcast, which is over with our friends at Tumblr House. We have an affiliate link with them, and you can find the book, The Latin Mass Explained by Monsignor Mormon, which is one of our prime texts that we're using. So go and visit our show notes at theologyofthebody.com. And if you're looking for a possible way to grow in your own love for the Latin Mass and for a way to give us a little support, it's a great way to do it. So, all right.
It's a great book, a great resource.
Yeah. Let's get into it. So we were talking about the fact that now we're coming into, at least in the traditional Latin Mass Missal, coming into the altar or going into the sanctuary. So the priest says to the people, Dominus vobiscum, and the servers on behalf of the people reply at cum spiritu tuo. I was reading in the some reflections from Dom Guéranger on the Mass. He says that the priest salutes the people, saying, Dominus vobiscum, the Lord be with you. It as though he were taking leave of them, now that the solemn moment is come for him to ascend the altar, and like Moses, enter the cloud. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, amazing.
So at this point, he goes up the stairs to the sanctuary. Traditionally, you would see, I think it's 1 step or 3 steps. There might be more. I can't remember. But at least traditionally that's the case. So if you go to places like the Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest in Detroit, like the St. Joseph's Oratory, you see the 3 steps. Anyway, so he goes up the steps to the altar and extending and joining his hands, the celebrant says in a clear voice, Oremus, and then he says that before he ascends the altar. Excuse me. So so he does that, and then he goes up to the altar and says, Take away from us our iniquities, we beseech thee, O Lord, that we may be worthy to enter with pure minds into the Holy of Holies through Christ our Lord. Amen. Again, that reminding us that we are entering into the temple, right? The true temple, which is Christ, right? And that's actually, it's quite interesting because at this point, the priest places his he places his joined hands upon the altar, and bowing, he says, "We beseech thee, O Lord, by the merits of thy saints whose relics are here, and of all the saints, that thou wouldst vouchsafe to forgive me all my sins." So, a couple things. Did you have some thoughts on these last few points?
Yeah, there's a few things. Like the mention of saints and relics, I think, is cool. That's, I think, something you only find in the Latin Mass, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's been kind of de-emphasized recently. I know you have points to talk about there, so I won't kind of try to step on it. But yeah, again, the asking for forgiveness,
Yeah.
Like it's interesting how many times this is repeated. And again, it's a stumbling block to the Protestants, maybe, that kind of thing that they tend to regard as vain repetition. But that the church sees as fruitful and important repetition.
It's almost like with every step the priest is taking towards the altar, and as the Mass proceeds, he is again asking God for forgiveness on behalf of himself and the people that are there.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it reminds me of in Eastern spirituality, how they just repeat the Jesus prayer.
Yeah.
Just asking for mercy incessantly, right? Yeah, anyway, the issue of repetition is interesting because you can do it for any number of reasons. Obviously, it's not because God didn't hear us the first time. It's not because like the Pharisees were repeating prayers over and over again to be seen and admired by others. But we repeat these prayers because we need to change our own hearts with the words of these prayers. We need to keep asking for mercy because we're so sinful and we're so insincere when we say it. You know, we need to keep trying to honestly and with our whole heart ask for mercy. Yeah, that's at least how I look at it anyway.
Yep. And the thing that also is pointed out is that at the point where the priest places his joined hand upon the altar, he says, Oramus te Domine, we beseech thee, O Lord, right? It's not just the priest beseeching him, it's us united with the priest begging God for that forgiveness too, right? Because the priest is the only one who needs to be cleansed. We need to be cleansed too. We need to be set free, you know? Like this is obviously the priest is offering the sacrifice as an altar Christus, but you know, just as there is the head, we are the members, right? The priest represents the head. We are the members. And there's an incredible, similarity here or, comparison to the altar itself. So when the priest comes up, right, he joins his hands on the altar and then he kisses the center of the altar. Generally speaking, that is where the altar stone would be. An altar stone, if you're not familiar, is a piece of marble or whatever the altar is generally made out of. Usually it's the same material. But inside of that altar stone are embedded first-class relics of saints. So, a couple things. First, let's talk about the altar. So, according to Dom Guéranger, he says that the altar represents our Lord Jesus Christ. The saints' relics, which are there, remind us that the saints are his members. For having assumed our human nature, he not only suffered his passion, triumphed in his resurrection, and entered into his glory by the ascension, but also founded the church upon earth, and the church is his mystical body. He is the head, and the saints are its members. From this point of view, then, our Lord has not the fullness of his mystical body without his saints. And it is for this reason that the saints who are reigning with him in glory are united with him in the altar which represents him.
Wow. So cool.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing though. So I was reading the Adoremus Bulletin, which is very much a Novus Ordo publication. But listen to what it says here and juxtapose that to what we just read in Dom Guéranger. Okay, so he says here, traditional explanations claim that the liturgy was celebrated upon the tombs of martyrs in the catacombs of early Christian Rome. Today's liturgical instructions, however, give primacy to the altar as the object which renders honor to the burial place of martyrs, and so the presence of relics indicates not the sacrifice of the martyrs alone, but more precisely their share in the sacrifice of Christ. The order of the dedication of an altar notes that it is fitting for saints' relics to be placed under altars so that the triumphant victims come to their rest in the place where Christ is victim. So it goes on to say that the altar should be made out of stone, but relics are, quote, no longer placed in the mensa, which is the top part, like the table part of the altar itself, as they once were, where a piece was removed from the top slab to insert the relics. According to today's liturgical instructions, relics are placed underneath rather than within the altar slab itself. This preserves the integrity of the mensa as an image of Christ and reinforces the place of relics under, not in, the altar. In this way, the sign value of the altar as an image of the martyrs participating in Christ's own sacrifice becomes clear, helping the signs lead to the revelation of the mysteries. So, couple things that I want to point out there. So it's saying here that we no longer put the altar stone, in the main part of the altar when we're building new altars, because we don't want to take away from the image that the altar is Christ. Dom Guéranger just said, we don't simply look at Christ as the head, but also united with his members. So that's why the altar stone is in like the main part of the altar. And that's why you kiss it. You're not just reverencing the altar who is Christ. You're also reverencing the family, like the saints, the church triumphant who are with you, offering that sacrifice in union, to God the Father. But here's the thing. I was talking to Julie about this, and Julie was saying, well, this of course makes sense that they would do this. They've already removed the saints from from any mention in the Confiteor. So let's remove them from the site, even of the priest, when he comes to the altar. Because, again, another stumbling block to Protestants. And it's it's interesting. So I was watching this video of they did these church tours on Salt and Light TV and featured different dioceses, and they showed the Diocese of Ottawa. And I've got a soft spot for Ottawa because, I was on net in Ottawa and whatnot. But they were showing the Cathedral of Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, whatever you want to call it, in Ottawa. And they've got a beautiful high altar, absolutely gorgeous in Ottawa. But they said that I guess they had what us trads typically refer to as a Cranmer table, but they had the altar separated, like a separate altar, which you would offer like you see in any other Novus Ordo parish. But it was movable. It wasn't a permanent fixture. So they designed the permanent fixture of the new altar. And it's like a block of marble, okay, with slits cut into it, which is illuminated from the inside.
Ooh.
Okay. They didn't want to take away from the high altar. Okay, well done. But the best part, and I say that sarcastically, the best part was when Archbishop Pendergrast said that he pointed out that the altar stone in this altar, you can actually see it. And so if you look, he said, if you look through the slats, you can see a little box down on the floor. That's where the altar stone is. It literally looks like it could be like just an aesthetic thing hiding a piece of, like, it could be hiding an electrical box, or it could be, it receives no reverence at all. And it's not even central. It's not even where the priest would, kiss. It's down on the bottom left where nobody can even reference it unless they get on the floor and like reach in and I don't know. It's, but again, this is what I'm saying. I see that removal of the altar stone as another innovation, that is directly trying to Protestantize the liturgy. I don't know. That's my hot take, but.
So I'm looking at the germ right now, and there is a whole section on the altar and its appointments that starts at paragraph 296. So reading here, paragraph 298, it is appropriate to have a fixed altar in every church, since it is more clearly and permanently signifies Jesus Christ, the living stone. It goes on to say an altar is fixed if it is attached to the floor, so as not to be removable, otherwise it is called movable. I specify that because it talks about how if an altar is movable and it is not fixed, then it's not required that it have relics of saints in it. Now, with the old high altars, they were fixed to the wall and they had a permanent position. So having those relics was a no-brainer. But with the new altars that they were building, paragraph 303 says, in building new churches, it is preferable to erect a single altar, which in the gathering of the faithful which will signify the one Christ and the one Eucharist of the church. And it says that having it like central so you can walk around it is better. Not true, but
Also, it's way better to have 5 altars.
One main altar and then multiple side altars. Yeah.
It's worth reading those few paragraphs anyway.
Deal with it, Father Steve. More altars is better. And more masses is better.
Yeah. But
it's just weird that they would say that it's, okay to have a movable altar and, not have any relics.
Did they have any movable altars before they started doing the backwards altars? I don't know, like separate ones. Because I think I have seen, I might be wrong, like a movable high altar. It wasn't a huge one, but it was one that was meant to go against the wall and could be like picked up and moved.
Weird. Yeah, I don't know.
It does say here in 302, the practice of placing relics of saints, even those not martyrs, under the altar to be dedicated is fittingly retained. So would that be like you could just put it on the floor and have the altar on top?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm asking you guys.
The other thing is it says it's been retained, not that it's been changed.
Right.
So,
the thing is, right there, when they talk about the fact that there was you would say mass on the tomb of a martyr, you're saying it on the literal tomb of of a martyr. So yeah, it's like a coffin-sized tomb. It's not like you have like a very small piece of bone somewhere fixed in that altar, where you don't even necessarily know or nobody else knows where it is. So yeah, I don't know. I just find it weird.
I could go into the design choices of a lot of altars.
But don't go there because we only have one life to live.
Yeah. One looks like a table from IKEA. One looks like it belongs at a church to be used for the holy sacrifice.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Can we... Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, another thing to point out too is that oftentimes in the Latin Mass, you will see parishes that have actual reliquaries on the altar too, right? Like our parish has 4 different reliquaries that sit in between the candles, and again, that points out that like we're surrounded by the saints at this Mass. It's not just us, and it's not just our Lord, right? It's our Lord and his members. Yeah. So they do that in the Novus Ordo as well, right? So, but it happens at the beginning of the Mass, right? But again, it's only in the Novus Ordo. It's only a reverencing. I mean, if this is the case, we're not reverencing the altar stone. We're just simply reverencing the image of Christ, the altar, right? Because we say that Christ is the altar, the priest, the victim, and the altar of sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
So,
it just says in the germ simply that they kiss the altar. Right?
Is there a reason in the Novus Ordo that the priest will go behind the altar to face the people to kiss the altar?
Generally, that's where the altar stone is.
That's where he says the Mass from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he just kisses it from wherever he's going to say the Mass from. Right?
Yep. Okay. Well, because 9 times out of 10, maybe not even that, like the tabernacle is behind the altar in good, quote, design parishes.
Yeah. So one last thing I had for the altar was just in Mormon, the 4 reasons he says that the priest kisses the altar. And some of them are no longer relevant based on what we've been talking about, right? So he says that the priest bows and kisses the altar, and this is done first out of respect to the altar which has been consecrated by the bishop. Second, out of respect for the body and blood of Christ, which rests in the tabernacle upon the altar. Third, out of respect for the saints, relics of whom are preserved in the altar stone. And fourth, out of respect for Christ, who is symbolized by the altar. So we get often only 2 out of those 4 at our usual Novus Ordo Masses. I mean, even at our Latin Mass, because we're in a modernized building, unfortunately, the tabernacle is not there, which is a shame.
It's off to the side.
But ideally, you should be reverencing all of those things. The actual physical altar as a blessed object, the symbol of Christ, the Eucharist, and the saints, all with the one gesture.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start breaking down these things that the church has built up, you just impoverish that gesture, right? Now it seems the only thing that's retained is the symbolism of Christ's altar, which is a good thing, but it's only like a quarter of the reason.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Another just kind of factoid to add to the fact that the altar represents Christ. Another thing that happens during the prayer of dedication for an altar is they pour oil on the altar, which represents, let's see here, according to, St. Thomas Aquinas, he says that it signifies Christ's holiness, right, as a king. Just very cool. Very cool.
That is cool. Should we go on to the introit?
Well, before we do, there's the incensing. Maybe we can just kind of briefly talk about that, right? So, incense smells great.
Looks great.
Mm-hmm.
Probably doesn't taste that great, though.
It's true. She's right.
At least I assume she is.
So yeah, I mean, incense was used in early times in divine worship. The use of it harkens to the book of Revelation, where we hear about the angel holding the bowl full of incense, which was the prayers of the saints rising to God. Yeah. So
some very important symbolism, and it was used in the temple in Judaism, right?
Yep.
So
lots
of
incense.
It's not like a Middle Ages thing. It goes back further than the church itself, really. Unless, I mean, the church extends into temple Judaism in a sense too, but yeah, extends all the way back before the incarnation. Are there any differences in the rules? Are kind of different in the TLM, it's always incense at high masses, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like in the general instruction for the Novus Ordo, it's basically incense when you feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of just says what's the exact quote? It's something like as the situation suggests, or something, as the occasion suggests, or something like that.
As the occasion suggests, Article 49, as the occasion suggests, the priest also incenses the cross and the altar.
Yeah, what does that mean? There's no actual guideline there.
Mm-hmm.
Usually now they only really use it at Easter and Christmas.
Yeah, like, do the other masses are they not an occasion that suggests incense, which symbolizes prayer?
Right. It's very vague. It's very vague. And the thing is, like, in the TLM, there's specific rules around this first incensing, right? So at this, according to Dom Guerger, he says, at this part of the Mass, the altar stone and the priest are thorough-feed. The incensing of the choir is reserved for the second time of the ceremony, which is at the offertory. It is one of the customs of the church to expose on the altar images and relics of the saints, which then are incensed at the same time.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, I love what Dom Guerger says here. He says, thus, our Holy Mother, the Church, the faithful bride of Christ, wishes to do as heaven does, and, taking advantage of the veil of its mysterious secrets, being even thus partially raised up by the beloved disciple, that being St. John in the book of Revelation, she borrows for our earth's imitation the tribute of honor thus paid, yonder above to the glory of her spouse.
That's so poetic.
Right? Right? It's like, come on.
It's just like, it's like someone way smarter and holier than us making the point that it harkens to Revelation, which we just said earlier.
Yeah. If we want to put that in layman's terms, it would be, as the occasion suggests, the priest also incenses the cross and the altar. Like, and the thing, it doesn't even say that the priest is thurified. It's only the cross and the altar. So the priest who offers the sacrifice, his prayer essentially, like if we're talking about if you want to call it the mystagogical catechesis that's occurring with him, right? When he's being incensed, it draws our mind to realize his prayers are being offered to God at this point, you know? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. A weird omission.
Yeah.
Definitely.
They use incense in the Divine Liturgy as well.
Yeah. Do you have some
lot
info on that?
Yeah. A lot of it. So after the entrance with the gospel, the choir will chant, and he will incense pretty well everything. I'm trying to look at specifically what he is incensing, with whom he is incensing. Yeah, it just says here, the censing is a sign of prayerful reverence and homage. As the smoke of the incense ascends, thus may our prayers ascend to heaven and be acceptable to God. There you have it.
Yeah, very straightforward. But if you've been to the Eastern Rite, you'll see they do.
Yeah, they do incense the altar. Is it still called the thurible?
Yep. Well, it is in the Latin Rite, or sorry, the Roman Rite. Yeah.
Well, their thurible equivalent is pretty cool. It's got like bells on it and stuff.
Whatever's Greek for thurible, I assume.
Right.
If we have any Eastern Rite people, please get involved. Tell us.
Shout out to Bill Dykstra.
Yeah.
Hi, Bill.
I love the bells on the Eastern thurible. I don't know if we mentioned it before, but I think they usually have 12 bells.
Oh,
for
wow.
the apostles.
No
on
way.
The
That's cool.
Yeah.
And when you see them swing, is it just, there's a specific motion that they have to use. And I'm so stressed when they do it, because you think they're going to hit something with it, or they're going to hit themselves, or somebody is going to get hit. They don't.
They're so well practiced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool.
But, it's pretty cool.
Let's be honest. Like, if they did hit somebody, they'd be pretty incensed.
It would be very insensitive. If they just smoked someone with it.
It'd be terrible. It would just be totally terrible.
Please tell me more about this. Is it myrrh? Is it myrrh?
That's not incense. It was just given alongside frankincense with the Magi.
Okay.
I think they do put myrrh in incense, though. I think so.
A mass?
I think they put it in in the granules or whatever.
Oh, well, maybe you're more right than I thought. Because the myrrh is supposed to be like the burial anointing. Yeah. And the frankincense is like the prayer incense.
Yeah. It's like the scent. I think it's the scent of myrrh. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do we actually have time for the introit? Yeah.
We could just quickly go through it. So, I mean,
let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's interesting how the Novus Ordo, how it makes reference to the introit in the general instruction of the Roman Missal, where it says specifically, when the people are gathered, the priest approaches the altar with the ministers while the entrance chant is sung. Obviously, like in the Latin Mass, we've already approached the altar and prepared ourselves. But yeah, so it says here that they are to do an entrance chant. But Mike was pointing out a very good point about this.
Yeah, before we started the podcast, I just wanted to say that it says there should be an entrance chant, and then in the very next paragraph it says, by the way, there are 4 options for the entrance chant. And the Novus Ordo. First one is the actual antiphon from the Roman Missal, which is the actual introit. Then there's another option, the seasonal antiphon and psalm of the simple gradual. So probably pretty similar, but just a different psalm, different setting, that kind of thing. And then the third option is a song from another collection of psalms and antiphons approved by the bishops, which can be a responsorial psalm, interestingly. And the fourth option is a suitable liturgical song approved by the bishop.
Whoa. Are you trying to say that some bishop approved of trading my sorrows?
Yes.
I am sad.
This would have to be the case. This would have to be the case. Every single song that you play for your entrance hymn should be approved by the bishop.
Dance moves 2?
Dance moves 2 and 3.
Depends how you're feeling that day.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I'm sure like this is never done in practice. It's just, okay, we've got number 4 that says we can do whatever we want, so we're going to do any song we want.
Dude, like, I mean, you and I both know that when we were doing music, if there was a song that was like, dude, that's a banger, let's do that for Mass, we didn't go to the bishop.
Yeah, entrance hymn, let's do it.
Yeah.
But you know what? If we did go to the bishop and say, hey, can we rap this song as the intro for Mass, he'd be like, first of all, who are you? And second of all, sure, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Me.
He's not in the business of approving opening hymns for Mass.
No.
You know,
he doesn't have time to approve that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And obviously the intention here is that, you know, maybe there would be some special way of singing a psalm or something that would be particularly meaningful to these people, and the bishop would approve it. But normally it would be like chanting psalms. Mm-hmm. But Novus Ordo in practice, it's just, there's a tiny loophole. So,
and Matt Maher just released a new album, so we're good for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Make it 20. I don't know. Like, yeah.
We're still playing songs from Matt Maher that he wrote 20 years ago at Novus Ordo parishes.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
And how sad is it that, like, Chris, you and I were worship leaders at Mass for so many years, and I didn't know about this rule until today.
Right. And the thing is, though, I mean, the priests, they have the missal. They have the general instruction of the Roman missal. They had all these resources. We didn't. We're just basic lay people. They could have said, hey, you know that new song from Hillsong? We probably should play it until we get that one approved. You know, if you wanted to follow to the T what was going on there, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
When a dad doesn't have control of his household, you end up with Trading My Sorrows, Days of Elijah. It goes on. Anyway.
Yep.
I wanted to point out, too, another modern liturgy that's a lot better. The Ordinariate has an introit. It seems like they're doing it in a way very similar to what the Germ probably intended, where they sing an opening hymn, and then when the hymn is done, they chant an introit very much like you would at the TLM. It's even Gregorian chant in the book.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Random factoid. So according to Dom Guerger, so formally, the introit was not done. The Ordo of St. Gregory tells us that the priest vested in the secretarium and then went to the altar, preceded by the cross and the torches, during which time the choir sang the introit. So that's similar to kind of, I guess, what you see in the Novus Ordo, right? Because if they followed this to the T, that would be the case. The introit would be sung, and the people would be coming. The priest and assisted by the servers would be coming out. But yeah, so it says,
and that's how it was before the prayers at the foot of the altar, right?
Yeah. It says here, it goes on to say, during which time the choir sang the introit, which was longer than we now have it, for the entire psalm was sung, and not merely one or two of its verses, with the Gloria Patri as at present. In like manner, it was the choir alone that took the remaining portions, which were to be sung during the Mass. The custom of the priest reciting these several portions originated with that of low Mass, which custom was at last introduced into high Masses.
Interesting.
Yeah?
The custom of singing the introit, I was reading on Catholic Encyclopedia. It's super ancient. That's something that we can be pretty confident is apostolic. Like, it's in all of the old documents of the liturgy that we have today. I go back, like, if you look in like the 4th and 5th century, these documents, they have antiphons to sing before and as the priest is coming in, basically. And they're described as antiphona ad introitum, basically. Yeah. Entrance antiphons. Right? So the terminology is the exact same.
Did you read that thing in Mormon about masses for the dead? I found that was very interesting.
Yes. Mormon.
Mormon.
Every time you say Mormon, I keep thinking Mormon. Anyway. How he, what is it? He,
like both the priest and the choir make the sign of the cross at the beginning of the introit, because it is considered as the opening of the readings. And technically, Mormon says that technically that is the real beginning of Mass, right?
Yeah.
But he says that, in Masses for the dead, Dom Guéranger says, Masses for the dead, the priest makes the cross over the missal only, which I thought that's interesting. But Monsignor Moorman, says that the reason why he does that is because this is understood as directing the blessing to the souls in purgatory.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, right? I love that.
Yeah, like he does it kind of. Yeah, that's great.
Just neat.
That thing about the Mass starting at the introit, it makes a lot of sense if you think about the history of the prayers at the foot of the altar, right? Because that's preparation for Mass. It was originally done in the sacristy, and then it was brought out into the foot of the altar. But it wasn't necessarily inserted into the Mass, right? It's still technically before the Mass. It's just the preparation is now done with the people at the foot of the altar.
At a low Mass, does the Mass begin at the introit?
It would just happen like normally. It just, there's no Asperges May.
Oh, okay.
Right. That's what I thought. There's still prayers at the foot of the altar.
Okay.
Yeah. The one thing that I thought was cool too, Monsignor Moorman said that the reciting of the introit reminds us of the ancient world sighing for the Redeemer and begging God to hasten his advent. It should awaken within us a great esteem for this same Redeemer, whom happily we possess and whose benefits we enjoy in the present sacrifice. The priest repeats the introit to mark the holy impatience of the patriarchs and the frequent prayers they made to God to send the Redeemer. Right? Because you go through the introit, right? So for example, the introit for this upcoming Sunday in Lent is, he shall cry to me and I will hear him. I will deliver him and I will glorify him. I will fill him with length of days. He that dwelleth in the aid of the Most High shall abide under the protection of God, the God of heaven. And then it says the Gloria. And then back again, we say, he shall cry to me and I will hear him. I will deliver him and I will glorify him. I will fill him with length of days. And that's from cool. Psalm 90. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, I missed one thing that I meant to say about the ordinariate. It's kind of funny how this liturgy incorporates some of the Novus Ordo changes, but still has some TLM stuff too. So some of it feels a little bit mixed up when you think about it in this whole breakdown, because they do their introit at the beginning, like the Novus Ordo, but whereas in the Novus Ordo, they immediately kiss the altar and then start into the act of penitence. In the Ordinariate liturgy, they say the introit, and then they do their version of prayers at the foot of the altar.
Weird.
Yeah. It's all in an order that's totally mixed up. Like it's taken parts of the Novus Ordo, but parts that are left over from the TLM that weren't cut from it, that were cut from the Novus Ordo. It's all weird.
Yeah.
And I love it because it has more of the good stuff left, but it's very weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we could just end the podcast discussing the Kyrie, because we have kind of already talked about that. But I pointed out last week from Father Smolarski, F.J., where he basically says that the Kyrie Christe, Kyrie eleison was wrongly attributed to the three persons of the Trinity. And that was proven wrong by modern liturgists. But guess what, Father Smolarski? Guess what? Listen to this. And I quote, also, hashtag Mormon is right. get his book in our show notes. He says, quote, Pope Innocent III gives this reason for this practice. Quote, the Father and the Holy Ghost have only the divine nature, but in the Son there is a double nature, the divine and human. To call attention to the Son's human nature, we address him as Christe, that is, anointed. In the second person of the Blessed Trinity, the human nature was anointed, united with the divine. Right? So.
Burn.
Yeah. So yeah. We address Kyrie eleison to the Father, Christe eleison to Christ, and then Kyrie eleison to the Holy Ghost.
Yep. Yeah. You mean we didn't just like randomly say the Kyrie 9 times only to Christ?
Right? Right?
That number makes no sense if you're not addressing it to the 3 persons. Okay. And just for reference, Pope Innocent III, I looked it up before the show, Pope in 1160. This is not a new development that trads are making up to try and justify their weird Kyrie.
Yeah.
Can I read this section? It's so
the
short.
Kyrie in the germ?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this last sentence is a head scratcher for me.
Okay.
So this is paragraph 52. After the act of penance, the Kyrie is always begun unless it has already been included as part of the act of penitence. Since it is a chant by which the faithful acclaim the Lord and implore his mercy, it is ordinarily done by all, that is, by the people in the choir or cantor having a part in it. As a rule, each acclamation is sung or said twice, though it may be repeated several times by reason of the character of the various languages, as well as the artistry of the music or of other circumstances. When the Kyrie is sung as part of the act of penitence, a trope may precede each acclamation. What?
Are you confused by the word trope?
Yeah.
We talked about it in the last episode, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Isn't that when it's like, Lord, you were sent to heal the contrite of heart, Lord, have mercy. That part before the Kyrie is a trope.
Okay.
It's not like a TV trope.
Okay.
I think I made this joke on the last episode too. It
wasn't that funny then.
Like it's not like a farm boy who is the chosen one or something. It's not that kind of trope.
No. It's like how much choice did they get in just willy-nilly saying whatever they want as part of the Kyrie?
So
I don't know.
Just a side note. So according to Dom Guéranger, he says, formerly it was the practice in many churches to intersperse them, the Kyries, intersperse them with words which were sung to the same melody as the invocations themselves, as we find in several old missals. The Missal of St. Pius V did away almost entirely with these Kyrie, called, on account of these popular editions, farsadi, in French, farchis.
Wait, what?
Yeah. When the Pope celebrates a solemn mass, the singing of the Kyrie is continued during the act of homage which is paid him on his throne, but this is an exception to the present observance throughout the church. So yeah, so we used to have tropes, I guess is the word would be, but then St. Pius V did away with those because they were a farce or farchis.
Is that what that actually means?
I don't know. I kind of want to find out what farchis is. Hold on. Let's find out.
Fake news, Chris.
I'm making it up, okay? Interesting. Listen to this. So farchi comes from the Old French farcire, so it's got to be this. I'm pronouncing that probably terribly in French, but it's an adjective. It means stuffed, especially with finely ground meat. So you would have mushrooms farci.
Let's just stuff some more prayers in there.
Oh, so cool. Make it stuff up.
Stuff the Kyrie. Stuff the Kyrie.
Oh man.
So next time you go to a Novus Ordo Mass and you hear those tropes, you know that you've got a stuffed Kyrie.
Yeah.
Ooh, looks like they're serving up a stuffed Kyrie for Mass today.
I remember when we first started coming to the TLM regularly and listening to how beautiful the Kyries are, how the tones change depending on the seasons too.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get kind of nervous when the Lord have mercies are sung with quote, quote, artistry. So the Novus Ordos. The melodies are just not even close to as pretty.
No.
As the ones we are used to now.
Why does it make you nervous?
Sometimes it's just bad.
Oh, you're just afraid of how cringe it's going to be.
Yeah. Like in terms of melody. Can you hear the guitars yet?
No, all I hear is Orbis Factor.
Okay. That's what I'm talking about. That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But again, that universal nature of those Kyries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? That you can go to a Latin Mass in Rome, you can go to a Latin Mass in Australia, and you're potentially going to know what Kyrie or what Gloria, like if you're a regular attendant of the traditional Latin Mass, you'll have an idea. And
which one it should be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think that lends to that kind of that idea of like the Tower of Babel, like the vernacular, having masses in a million different languages, and like it becomes it's difficult to like. I mean, I've gone to like Spanish masses and whatnot, and I have no idea what's being said. I can guess, but I don't know.
A friendly reminder is having multiple languages was a punishment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is a universalism in one language, Latin.
Universalism's a lie, though.
Okay. Maybe that's not the correct word. Is that the wrong
nature.
word? Yeah. Universal nature.
The Catholicity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Properly understood. Yeah.
You didn't say anything wrong. I was just making a joke.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
But you're right, though. Like it makes it difficult to enter in. I mean, even if you watch masses in Rome, for example, and it comes to the time for the general intercessions, and they get up and it's like, okay, then you've got, lady from America, lady from South America, lady from Thailand, lady from, I mean, if you're a person sitting in the pews, not that there are pews in St. Peter's, but if you're sitting there, you're going to go like, what was just said? I have no idea, because I don't speak Thai. I don't speak Swahili. Like, so anyway, I think that's a good podcast. I think that's a good place to end. What do you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So next week, the Gloria?
No.
Actually, no, because we don't do it during Lent. Right?
We'll come back to it.
Talk about it.
Oh, we're going to come back to it?
No, I'm just saying, like, we could, in the spirit of Lent, come back to the Gloria after Lent's over.
I don't know. I think going through it all properly makes more sense.
We will.
Okay.
But next week, Mike, myself.
We have the interview.
and Billy Griffith of OK Catholics are getting together to discuss trads, Trump, the philosophy of voting, and
we're going to dabble in American politics because we have a death wish. And we don't know anything about what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. But according to Billy, that gives us an edge because we're out of our element. So
yeah, at the very least, if we have plausible deniability if we say anything terribly wrong.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I have like zero understanding of most political groups and parties. There's just too much on my brain. But I will be with you guys in spirit, holding a bowl of popcorn and just listening.
Mm-hmm. It'll be good.
The gif of Michael Jackson just eating popcorn at a movie theater.
Yeah.
That'll be me.
Too funny.
We're making a terrible mistake.
Well, you know what, though? We talked about it in particular in season 1, I think, about the importance of getting out of our echo chamber. And, you know, like Billy has been sharing some stuff on his Instagram. A lot of people have been talking about it, sharing it out. And, you know, I think he brings an interesting insight into things. And it's not kind of the thing that you'd expect. And I don't know. I appreciate his frankness and his honesty. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really good chat. And if you're gonna check it out, get ready because I think it's going to be a spicy one. I do.
Well, we have politics here in Canada.
Do we?
Everybody. Yeah. I mean, it's all messed up. None of it makes sense.
Yeah.
But the same kind of topics.
Our politics are so bad. We're jealous of Trump. I can't sum it up any better than that.
Yeah.
It's true. It is true.
It's Trudeau.
Yeah.
Hey.
It's Trudeau. Oh.
Well, guys, thank you very much again for hanging out. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with us and listening. To all of those who gave up like social media and podcasts for Lent, we see you. We see you because we see the numbers have dropped.
Happy Easter. Happy Easter to you.
But if you haven't given up like social media and whatnot for Lent, give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find us at Theology of the Buddy. You can email us, theologyofthebuddy@gmail.com. We love emails. We've been getting a few, and it's been great.
The email.
The email. Is there anything else that you guys can think of before we sign out?
I'm so glad that we're here together.
Me too.
Love you guys.
Could you imagine if 10 years ago an angel showed up and said, you guys are going to be doing this podcast?
Yeah.
Hits me in the feels. Makes me really happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd call hacks, to be honest.
Yeah.
God does good things. He does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, so thanks again, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next Wednesday. Our podcast come out at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you can download us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts. Yeah, you can actually follow us on YouTube as well. I know that we have a few subscribers on YouTube. Not all of our episodes are up there, sadly. We'll try to figure out how to get our backlog uploaded. But yeah, so thank you to everybody who's hanging out with us, and we consider you buddies.
Thanks, buddies.
Okay, well, let's end this. So, from all of us to you,
stay tratty.